It's the KOHO Morning Show. So nice of you to join us today, and looking forward to another installment of our Community Connections podcast series with Shiloh Burgess and the Wenatchee Valley Chamber of Commerce, their executive director here, along with Craig Mitrakul. Craig is the co-owner and winemaker at Crayelle Cellars. We're going to find out more about that operation, but also talk in more general details about the wine industry here in North Central Washington, and also about tourism, ag style, as far as how the wine industry is a part of that, and about why folks are coming to our region over even others here in the States and on the West Coast and even around the globe, perhaps even to check out the wines we've got here locally. And Craig, Shiloh, I appreciate the time. Thanks.
Thank you for having us.
It's great to be here.
Yeah, it's good to see you again, Craig. I know you and I chatted a few years ago on radio when I was at a different station doing a different show, but you've been in the winemaking business for quite a while here, so I'll be anxious to catch up. And Shiloh, let's swing to you first and just kind of house this piece under the tourism umbrella that we're covering now through the Chamber. Again, it's great to have you guys doing this with us, and we sure appreciate the continued support and partnership on this endeavor. So, I mean, we didn't really have this. I mean, we did, but we didn't really have it to this magnitude even 20 years ago here in the Wenatchee Valley. I mean, the wine industry has exploded all over the state, and we are a part of that. So this is something that's probably relatively new in the puzzle pieces that fit together what tourism is here in the region.
So it's really interesting. If you come to the Wenatchee Valley Chamber of Commerce Visitor Center, which is located in the front half of our office, the first thing you're going to notice is our roots towards agriculture, right? We have a wonderful tractor that Sandy Apple sits at. And yes, our visitor center host, his last name is Apple. How great is that when you're in the apple capital of the world? But then you also see this beautiful truck. And the truck actually serves as an old orchard truck that was pulled literally from one of the farms here in the valley and converted into a tasting bar. So we are one of two organizations in the state that has a tasting room associated with our visitor center. So it's an honor to feature wineries like Crayelle Cellars, which Craig is part of, in that tasting room and to help promote not only ag tourism in the area, but our growing wine industry. So Craig has agreed to be part of this segment to kind of help us understand the lay of the land when it comes to some of our tourists' most favorite activity, which is wine tasting in the region. Craig, thank you. And maybe share with us kind of the origin story of the industry. I mean, you've been with it for some time and kind of was one of our founding, players in the band, if you will. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I came to the area in 2004, and oddly enough, I moved up here from Walla Walla. You know, this area has a lot to offer. It's between outdoor recreation. It's a beautiful place to live. When I first came up here, there was some winemaking happening, only a few producers. You know, the opportunity to come up to a wine region that was, kind of its infancy and be a part of the growth was really, really attractive to me. Yeah, it was a great opportunity. It's nice to have seen the industry blossom since then.
And this is all premised on a region, it sounds like, Craig, of wine, as we talked about in Walla Walla. And then I know there's been, more historical, if you will, vineyards through the Yakima Valley and areas down toward Prosser and Tri-Cities. That was sort of the wine region of Washington State for a long time. It seemed to me like decades and decades. Yes, there was a little pocket of wine activity going there, but it was certainly no Napa Valley. It was definitely no places in France or Spain that are famous for their wine regions. But all of a sudden, the migration happens north and then east and then a little bit west, and then it's just prolific. It's all over the place. So I guess the biggest question I would have is not only maybe how did that happen, but why did that happen? I mean, after decades of there being, again, these little pockets of wine and winemaking here in the state, it just went nuts. It just exploded. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think the one thought early on, and anything below I-90, south of I-90 was, great conditions for growing grapes. Anything north of I-90 was, that's going to be too cold up there, and winters are going to be too harsh. We're going to end up losing vines, to winter kill. Yeah, so I think in the early 80s, like the George area, that started some grape growing in that area, was successful. Actually, a lot of those areas didn't experience frost, whereas like further south, some of the cold pockets. So I think the thing with the wine industry, it's probably, with farming in general, it's like, find the right sites. There's these little microclimates within the area. And that was, I think it was just that original thought process that limited the industry growth north of, probably Quincy, George, up this way. As, more people tried it and started realizing, hey, there's some unique characteristics of grapes growing up here, and for instance, white grapes grown in the Quincy area. Those grapes actually have pretty unique characteristics, and it's gotten its own AVA. So I think as we learn more about where we can grow grapes, as we learn more about certain growing areas and there's unique characteristics of the wines from those areas, then we start to be able to put petitions into the federal government and say, hey, we think this is worthy of its own AVA. And then as those AVAs become approved, I think that helps kind of define the growing areas within the state and helps kind of define some of the unique characteristics of different areas within the state.
So locally, you've been here over 15 years as the industry has developed with, I'm thinking in terms of, there are aged wines that are much older than 15 years, but a lot has happened. I mean, you've mentioned, a couple AVA distinctions and those kind of things. Your career has changed, right? So
Yeah.
you're a winemaker. You work for, you started here with St. Laurent and Ryan Patrick, and now you have your own winery, and you also are a winemaker for another local winery in the area. What have you seen? What have been the most impressive or even surprising changes that have occurred for us locally as an industry, but also with the tourists in this area that have come through the tasting rooms or have, commented on the quality of wine in the region?
Well, going back to when I first came here, I think what I've been fortunate enough to work with winery owners that kind of have a bigger vision for the area, allow me to work for, one company, work for another company, and as well as doing some consulting on the side. And I think they realize, wait, the more good wine in the area, the better, the more it's going to attract consumers to the area, get the area, kind of up and help it grow quicker. Mm-hmm. And the collaboration between producers, that's what has been helpful to help us grow. For sure the wine quality continue to increase, and that, that's for sure helping drive the growth within the industry. Tourism, I think one thing I've seen with tourism is that, in the beginning, I think it was just wine was like kind of just something to do while you're here. And like, a couple people drop in, like taste some wine, kill some time. But now I think it's kind of changed where, we still get that, which is good because we're introducing people to wine and, what we have here in the area. But also I think we've kind of seen wine consumers or people that actually just travel to taste wine and are choosing our area to come wine tasting and experience wines that are a little bit different, or experience areas that are growing or smaller, and
which is awesome.
Among many other things, for sure. Craig Mitrakul with us today. He is the winemaker and co-owner of Crayelle Cellars, here along with Shiloh Burgess, Executive Director of the Wenatchee Valley Chamber of Commerce, in for another of our Community Connections podcast series with the Chamber. Again, you can find these online any place that you find your favorite podcasts or at our website. There's a link there at KOHO101.com. Chamber has links on their website as well. Craig, one of the things it seems to me about the wine industry that's so unique is that when you go into a place like Lake Chelan, a place like Wenatchee, pick your spot as far as where there are wineries that are active and there's tasting going on and things of that nature. It isn't that all of the restaurants in Wenatchee, for example, don't wish each other well, but they're competing heavily for each other's business when people come into town. It isn't as though, again, one sporting goods store isn't rooting for another to do okay, but they don't want them taking any of their business away, et cetera, et cetera. So there's that friendly competition, as we say in the marketplace. The wine industry seems to have so much fraternity involved in it to me because you all want each other to visit each other's wineries. It's really a community effort, it seems to me, more than it is a one business here, one business there, this person wanting to excel far greater than another. There are no monopolies, it seems like, in the wine industry, especially from a boutique level like yours and even from larger vintners levels in the region. That's got to be a really neat thing to be a part of, for one thing, and also it's got to help to start a business like your own, like so many of these other wineries out there as well, to know that you've got so much great support from people that are doing the same thing right next door.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think part of it, for sure, is like, when people come visit, it's pretty rare someone just visits one winery and then say, okay, we're done for today. So, that's a great thing, because if customers are visiting multiple places, we can all, we can all benefit, we can all share our stories and, meet new people. And that's, I think that kind of helps drive that camaraderie. And people within the industry, we all want to continue to improve and, share ideas.
It seems very indicative of the early times when the chamber was founded in 1918, and their first publication is like, come here, it's literally where money grows on trees. I mean, we're like, it's where money grows on vines now. But that industry, right, did the same thing. I mean, there was collaborators like Grady Oval, who was very much, come in, see my farm, we're trying this, we're doing this, and others that were we're going to hold this a little closer. But overall, then the collaborative for the entire apple industry pulled together, and the godfathers mainly of that apple industry, that's now cherry and pears and peach, like they're still here, or their families are still here, and they're still leaders in the industry. And I do think that that's an important distinction about the wine industry that's growing in Chelan and Douglas counties, is kind of that root in the idea of we are better together, we are stronger as an industry when we are, working together to develop the long-term future and preserve the long-term opportunity for our businesses, but just the industry itself. And you see so many new vineyards going in, right? I mean, I drive to Quincy and I'm like, whoa, that's a lot of grapes. They weren't there before, and it's just impressive that agriculture can still take a new turn, right? I mean, in some of those areas, it used to be apple orchards, and today it's that. So what are you seeing, or what are you thinking will be up next for the industry here, short term, 3 to 5 years, and maybe long term down the road, 10 to 15, 20 years?
Well, the proof is, like you said, as you drive out to Quincy, there's more vineyards. I think we're going to see more grapes being grown this way. There's quite a bit of development for vineyard growing, like the Arondo and north of Arondo. There's more vineyards going in Chelan. And so I think just vineyard growth, plantings. And then with plantings, obviously, you got to do something with those grapes. So I think probably the effect will be more wineries, which, we've talked about. It's a good thing. But I think maybe that'll also feed wineries that start to do a little more regional fruit, have grapes that are from closer to their areas. I think Washington's it's kind of unique in that respect, too, because a lot of wine regions, typically the grapes are, pretty close to the wineries, and things aren't so spread out. And I think Washington's unique in that because, things are really spread out. A lot of the grapes are in areas where there's not much else. And so people are really moving fruit around in quite a few different areas. And so maybe as we get more vines, like we might see that regionally, that we're not traveling as far to bring in our fruit, and maybe getting a little more of a regional identity as far as the grapes we're using as well.
Most certainly.
Yeah.
So I want to switch just real quick before we let you go and talk about your boutique wine, because you have a very specific approach, which is what I love about the wine industry, is the personal expression that each winery, especially the smaller or more boutique wines, put into the development of their craft, right? Of their, whether it's the way that their winery looks, if it's an estate winery where you're coming on and the grapes are being grown there, whether it's a tasting room and your wines itself are different. But you all took a very specific approach to how you make your wines, and they are a little different, right? So what is your inspiration as a winemaker? What inspires you, and what would you want listeners to know about Crayelle Wines, or what you're trying to do through that brand and through that? I mean, it's very personal. It's your creation, which is a beautiful thing, but it's all different. So tell us a little bit about that.
With our little label or brand, the original plan was like, well, we just want to make wines that, of a particular style, that we're interested in, which was kind of wines that are kind of have subtleties, or, some elegance, and not necessarily big, bold, where they kind of hit you over the head. And so things that were enjoyable, but, as you kind of tasted it more, you start to realize, man, there's a lot of stuff, flavors in here. And as you keep coming back to it, it starts to evolve, and you start picking out, more nuances. So that's kind of where it all started. And then, fortunately, I've been able to work with, other wineries where they say, yeah, you can use our facility. And so it's kind of worked out where it's been a creative outlet for me and my wife. And originally we started with just 2 wines, Riesling and Syrah, because, they're kind of interesting varietals to us, and they really kind of show the terroir where they're grown. But, kind of things evolved where we became interested in some Spanish varietals, have the opportunity to make a white grape called Albarino, and there still isn't much in the market, but it's definitely grown since then. But that was in 2012, and there wasn't much Albarino planted at that point, but there's more Albarino wines in the area now. And then with that kind of got interested in, trying to do some red Spanish blends, which are Tempranillo based. And then we're able to get our hands on some other Spanish varietals like Graciano and things like that. So that's kind of where we're taking it right now. But the nice thing about being small and, just being the two of us, it can evolve, and it kind of, can kind of switch gears a little bit as we go. And I think our customers are open to just trying new wines and, kind of traveling the wine journey with us and allowing us to be creative. And so far, so good. They've been enjoying what we've been putting out. So.
All very good. All very good for our region. Again, talking today with Craig Mitrakul. He's the co-owner and winemaker at Crayelle Cellars, along with Shiloh Burgess from the Wenatchee Valley Chamber of Commerce, their executive director. It's another edition in our Community Connections podcast series with the Chamber. Again, these are downloadable any place that you find your favorite podcasts online or at our website. There's links there, of course, KOHO101.com. Also links at the Chamber's website, too. This is part of the tourism series. We've done many of these now with the Chamber and looking forward to many more here as the weeks and months go by. Craig, Shiloh, I appreciate the time very much. Thanks again for the time. Craig, we'll talk to you perhaps down the road. Best of luck with everything in the future. And Shiloh, I know we'll rendezvous again real soon.
Yes, and I hope KOHO listeners will come down to the Chamber tasting room and taste some of Craig's wine and many others from our region.